Hello and welcome to the Loft of Missoula, and welcome to the final event in the series of the annual lecture that the Sustainable Business Council does each year to highlight a sustainability leader that we bring in nationally. Many of you were at our talk last night at the School of Business, who's been a wonderful supporter of this annual event series for a long time, and hosted us last night for a talk and a reception with our guest Mark Buckley, who's the Vice President of Environmental Affairs for Staples Corporation. And we're excited to have him. It was a really exciting talk. So he'll do a little bit of a recap today and maybe say some new things. And we also have with us James Stevens of Blue Marble Biomaterials, which is a locally based company that sells globally and is part of the circular economy. The series is called The Circular Economy, Waste is a Resource. And our final speaker today is Patrick Collins, who's the co-founder of Montainer, which is another circular economy business based here in Missoula. So we're excited to connect the dots between the macro and the micro. Mark's Staples reach is in 26 countries.
Yes.
So that's on the very large scale, and really interesting that way. I'm sorry, I neglected to introduce myself. I'm Jenny Misch. I'm the director of the Sustainable Business Council. Our mission is to advance a vibrant local economy built on sustainable practices. So I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this event series. I mentioned the School of Business Administration. We're really grateful to them. Also, Dining helped to provide food last night. Balance Tech provided support for this series that we really appreciate, and Grizzly Liquor, and MissoulaEvents.net, Bravo Catering, and of course the Loft of Missoula. And also this morning we have wonderful tasty treats from Bernice's Bakery that we all love. And I'm sorry, from Le Petit and Le Petit? No, Bernice's, it's from Le Petit. My bad, but we like them both. Thank you to Le Petit Autre, and also to Hunter Bay Coffee. So thanks to all of you for being here, and I will I think that's all we. Oh, I wanted to also announce that we have I'm not a morning person. You guys are all up before dark every day. I'm like so impressed. The Sustainable Business Council's upcoming events are called Moving Missoula Towards Zero Waste. It's a whole month of activities for the month of April. If you have an event that is involved in, connected with Earth Day, or is in some way connected with waste, or if you have a story to tell or something you'd like to highlight, we're putting together a free events calendar that we'd like to publicize to the community. There's going to be dozens of things going on, so you can still get those events in to the print version of our Moving Missoula Toward Zero Waste guide, if you can do that by Friday. Sponsorships are also available through Friday. After that, you can still add events to the events calendar, and they'll be online. So on April 2nd, look for this 24-page version of our Moving Missoula Towards Zero Waste guide that's packed with information. It'll be inserted in the Independent on April 2nd, and we'll have an online version that's twice as long and with lots of hyperlinks and a huge amount of information. So I wanted to just make sure everybody is aware of those upcoming things. So, okay. So now that you've listened patiently to all these announcements, thanks for joining us, and I'm going to ask Mark to share with us some about his work in the circular economy.
Sure. Thanks, Jenny. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I looked online today, and it's 23 degrees at home, and the wind chill is about 10 below zero. I think we have 45-mile-an-hour winds at home, so I still have 2.5 feet of snow in my yard, so it's nice to see green out here. I was promised snowshoeing, but I guess that's not going to happen here. For those of you who weren't at the event last night, I'll just give you sort of a brief recap on sort of our sustainability journey, and it is a journey. It continues to be a journey as a company, and even though we're big, I mean, when I started with the company, we had just a few stores in the Northeast. We were in the back of a dilapidated warehouse in Newton, Massachusetts, and every 2 weeks the mice used to chew through the telephone lines and shut them down, and I'd come in the morning, buy coffee, and make coffee for the building, which was a very, very small building. So when we talk about being in 26 countries and 80,000 people, I still think of us as being a small a small community, and I believe that we still are. And I don't think that scale has anything to do with that. So our journey, not surprisingly, like many of you, starts with the areas that you control. And so for us, it was things like our fleets and our distribution centers and our stores and our buildings and all the basic blocking and tackling that folks focus on relative to sustainability. But the reality is that only represents about 7% of our environmental footprint globally. So if we don't really think about our sphere of influence and increasing that to think about the products that we sell, how those products are used, helping our customers be more sustainable, at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're missing a great opportunity to create really a new community and bring more value to the things that hopefully customers look for in us. So our long-term aspirational goal as a business is to be a trusted, sustainable business solutions partner with our customers and better understand what their needs are. We service, the one-person enterprise all the way up to the multinational Fortune 500 company and sort of everybody in between. But at the end of the day, we believe that we have an opportunity to activate change and act as a change agent, to help them run their businesses differently. And we also, conversely, on the supply chain, have an opportunity to actually influence and start to change the dialogue around things that are wrong in supply chain, everything from materials to toxic inputs and so forth. And so, that's really the focus of a lot of the work that we're doing. But it's interesting because when you start talking about a company that's as large as ours, it feels like this big impersonal behemoth, right? And I think one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to take it down to the lowest common denominator, and it's not, a big business serving businesses. It's really we talk a lot about B2B. I think it's more H to H, so it's human to human, and it's really taking the relationships that we have with people within our organization to start to activate and teach them about doing business differently, and then finding those partners and opportunities to start to influence our spheres of influence, whether that's supply chain or whether that's actually engaging small businesses and providing them products and services that historically we hadn't. So I'll just give you an example. I mean, we had announced last week on Wall Street, 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, that we're offering small business loans. So anywhere from a $1,000 to $1 million dollar loan program for small businesses, capital loan program, which fundamentally changes the way that many people think about us as a provider. Imagine if we could start to think about other sustainable business services that we could start to offer customers to run their businesses and lessen their environmental impact. What kind of impact could that have on not only the local community but the global community? So I'm going to stop rambling, but there's I think there's tremendous opportunity to learn from the good work that folks like you do every day. You're much more agile than we are at times, and I can't tell you the number of times that I get ideas from customers and folks like you that really say, hey, how come you guys aren't doing X, Y, Z? And it's like, well, gee, I don't know. Why aren't we doing X, Y, Z? Maybe we should do X, Y, Z. And I think that question is always on my mind. It's what if, and I think that's the thing that's exciting about not only being here but also learning from all of you. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and spend some time with you today.
Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me to speak. It's a great opportunity. I think some people know what we do and who we are in the community, and some people are completely oblivious to what we are and kind of what we do. Blue Marbles, we're really a upcycling and especially chemical manufacturer who works with spent or side stream resources or waste from other companies and converts that into massive economic opportunity. And really, when we look at that opportunity, there's so much there and there's so many lessons to impart. And really, ours has been a journey as well. Most of the fundamental work that we started on research I started doing in 1998, traveling the world. So I mean, this is an inception of something that's going on 20 years worth of work to really get where we are today. But what we did is we incorporated in 2007 with really the idea to produce renewable jet fuel and renewable diesel from algae biomass. We quickly found out the economics of that are incredibly difficult, much earlier than the rest of the industry. So we actually went out and started harvesting harmful algae blooms out of the ocean and converting that into renewable resources. That's a great economic model, except there's all sorts of regulatory burdens that no one even knew existed in that whole thing. So as we started going and adventuring through this whole process, Our first major pivot and our first learning process came through. We were presenting at a conference talking about this great jet fuel we'd worked on with a major airplane manufacturer for defense purposes. It's this great chemical. We were talking about all the great properties of it, and this kind of frumpy old man came up to us at the end of this thing, and he came up to us and he said, your jet fuel you want to sell for $1.70 a gallon? He's like, I'll pay you $86 a gallon for it. And we're like, okay, why? And he's like, well, it's the smell of blueberries and we use it in flavoring. And that really caused this whole viewpoint of, all right, let's pivot, let's really look at it. And then from that point, we spent about 2 years really learning that industry. And I'd come out of biotech where we had massive margins. It'd be easy to have 95% margin on a product. Traditionally, most sustainable companies, recycling, upcycling, you're lucky to get 3, 4, 5% margin on that process. So really, I looked at it from a different viewpoint, and that's what we really started paying attention to in the industry, is how do we attack, flavoring, specialty chemical, and biotech margins into this market and this avenue for sustainability and renewable resources and renewable energy and all this stuff. And that really started our whole progression in developing large amounts of technology, kind of with this idea of we're not going to touch anything that doesn't have at least a 50% margin on it. When you start working in that realm, you have the ability to use that revenue from that process to subsidize your real sustainability goals and your real environmental goals. And so fundamentally what Blue Marble does is we have a handful of processes that we work on. Our first and our workhorse process is we engage in fermentation, just like brewing beer. We take wasted resources. It could be paper, it could be coffee grounds, it could be food waste from a process, it could be organic industrial waste from, say, a pulp mill, all sorts of different aspects. And we break that material down into a bunch of kind of basic components. And then what we do is we reassemble those components for target products in a wide variety of ways. And so what we do is we work with all our partners to really reassemble those components in a way that fits their goals. Whether it's a clean labeling goal, so they don't have to put excess stuff on their labeling because it was made from the starting feedstock, say a food product, a grain, and turn it back into a flavoring for that product where that doesn't necessarily have to be listed as it because it was made from the source material. It might be a natural goal. The European Union has much more rigorous goals for natural, so we might follow those policies and help them build that component. So what we've merged into and become over the years is not only the ability to be a standalone manufacturer, we partner with Fortune 500 companies all over and work with companies all over the globe to really custom tailor turning their waste into custom solutions for them. And then what that allows us to do is kind of stretch our brains and create creative solutions to solve all these different problems. And we can solve problems anywhere from packaging to flavoring to pharmaceutical components to whatever. We work on this broad range, and really what we've allowed us is we've allowed our partners to guide us on the overall major goal that they want to accomplish, and then we create all the solutions underneath. And I always joke in some of my presentations people have seen, either for Tester, Senator Tester, or other groups, I always talk about how I made my career being ridiculous. Really what we've done is we've made our career by really tackling any goal that someone's put in front of us. And instead of saying we can't do it or this looks impossible, we always say our job is to make this work. And it's to, if we have to go get stuff out of a junkyard and build the equipment from scratch, or we have the resources to get brand new fancy equipment, we'll just do it and we'll go through it and we'll get the proof of principle done, we'll move to the next steps and do that whole thing. So really, from Blue Marble's viewpoint, we have a couple different things that we do. And really one is where we're that nimble, innovative piece, and we're that agent of change for a lot of corporations and a lot of groups that don't have the resources in-house to be able to spend the time and resources to look on creating those solutions. Our second one is we have a manufacturing component where we manufacture materials for people for all over the world with their goals. So they send us stuff here, we work with waste, we take in coffee waste, we do all these different things and actually directly manufacture product. And then we're also effectively a co-location or partnering company where we look at the entire supply chain of what they're working with and we integrate our technologies, our solutions, we bring our other partners from other fields in, and we really do that interdisciplinary look. We'll take ideas out of biotech and bring it into energy, or we'll bring it into flavoring and fragrance, or we'll take ideas from clean tech and catalyst for fuel cells and see how we can apply that into manufacturing pharmaceuticals or whatever. So we're not limited by a lot of companies where if you're talking to a food company or you're talking to, say, a paper manufacturing company, they're used to only their technology. We really help people bridge all those different technologies and find novel solutions, many of them much more cost affordable or even cheaper than their current way of doing business or more profitable than the current way of doing business that they didn't expect. So that's really kind of what we work on at Blue Marble. And I'll end now because I was getting cues from the sides. So.
All right. So, hi, I'm Patrick, and I'm with Montana. I'm one of the co-founders, and we build homes out of recycled shipping containers. Had anyone seen our demo downtown at all? Cool, cool. Well, so what I'm going to do now is just kind of give you some background on the prototype that you guys saw downtown. I'm going to show you just kind of the end-to-end construction process from start to finish. But I guess before I go through that, we're actually just starting to enter full-scale production for the model that you saw, and we've also got some other models that we're working on for clients as well. And but yeah, so let's see here, which clicker?
You may have to turn it on. I turned
Oh,
it on.
oh, you turned it on. So
Is it not working?
oh, there we go. Cool. So there are millions of shipping containers in the world, and here in the United States, we actually have the most shipping containers of any country due to our trade deficit. There's just more containers coming into the United States every year than leave, and so they end up stacking up at our ports, and they're just a great building material for modular construction. So we started working on this a bit over a year ago. This is the prototype that was kind of the culmination of our first effort with the company to create a modular product where someone could just order a home and have it delivered and shipped to their site and installed. And so it didn't start out looking like this. This is a recycled shipping container, and that's the inside. Some of you guys might have seen this. So it's got everything that you would expect in a home in 200 square feet in this model. It even has a washer and dryer combo. But that's what it started out like. And excuse some of the pictures, they're kind of blurry. We just took them with cell phones and things. But and so that was the first day. Altogether, it took about 90 days to build that first prototype. There's just cutting, and then you cut out the wall sections, weld in framing around the openings there, and then in this particular, this isn't how we're going to do it in the future when we're actually in production, but we actually flipped the container on its side to insulate the bottom of it, which was pretty crazy. So that's the bottom of the container, and then there's after insulation. So it kind of looks like cake or some cake frosting. I don't know. And then so these are actually the panels that we cut out for the wall sections, and then we put them on rolling barn door hardware, and so they actually create a locking barn door that closes up over all the glass. You see it goes on this track. That's actually a gutter as well. It goes along the side of the container. And then we frame it out with wood, with 2x3s. And from there, it actually is pretty much standard construction process. So it's just electrical.
It's cheaper than actually building a house from scratch.
Well, it depends. It really depends. In such a small unit, it's actually not. It's probably comparably cost effective, and the reason is that there's just so much crammed into such a small space. So on a per square foot basis, it's probably comparable to conventional construction. When you start actually adding modules together, because you've got a bathroom, a kitchen, washer and dryer, everything just in 200 square feet. So once you add another 200 square feet that doesn't have all those utilities, that's when the cost starts to really come down.
And that last as long?
Oh, far longer. Yeah. So yeah, these and I'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, as far as the durability of these homes, it's far better than conventional construction. So this is actually an in-wall toilet. This is just some plumbing. And that was what the container looked like before, and then after we painted it, it's like a huge difference. And that's when it really started to come to life. And so this is just, we're in a small corner of the old Bonner Mill site, so that's where we're starting production.
Do they only let you work at night? Is
Well, this is just always at the end of the day when we were like working. We're like, look at what we did, you know, like so excited about it. So.
It's also a giant cave.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is pretty, yeah, cavernous in there. Yeah. This just kind of shows the transformation. Then we insulated the inside here, so with spray foam insulation, and there's actually a lot of reasons why spray foam insulation is good, but it's also required to meet. So this home actually meets all building code requirements, and so to do that, we need to use spray foam insulation because there's just these weird things. Like with a shipping container, they're only 8 feet wide. So if you're going to use a single container, after you build in walls, you're landing on like 7'1", and anything less than 7 feet doesn't meet building code for a livable space. So, so there's just like these, that's just an example of things you wouldn't think of that make the, starting with a container a little more challenging than you might expect. So this is us hanging the rolling barn doors. So we're putting them on the track there. These things weigh about 500 pounds or more. You wouldn't really expect that, but. And installing the doors, and it's really coming together. Then we put in the sheetrock, painted it, and then installed all the cabinets and flooring, and this is where it was really like, we were getting really excited about it because this is like a 3-month process for us. So. And then the bathroom. So another thing about this bathroom, this is actually the smallest code compliant bathroom that you can have. It's like a sailboat bathroom, I guess. So yeah, it's a shower pan bathroom. Everything is inside the shower, toilet, and everything. So, and this is the kitchen here, and then you just load it on a truck and deliver it downtown Missoula. And so we demoed it in downtown Missoula for a couple weeks, and then we took it to Seattle, Washington, and we featured it at Pike Place Market there. And that was really eye-opening as far as the need for this kind of housing in markets like Seattle. Housing is just so expensive there that we have one client in particular that's going to put this exact unit in their backyard and rent it out for close to $1,500 a month. And so, I mean, in places like Seattle, it really makes a lot of financial sense. And that's Montana. That's what we are. So we're a startup modular home manufacturer, and we're just starting production this coming month for our first clients, and slowly scaling up from there. So.
Great. Well, thank you to each of our panelists. I asked them to just speak very briefly so that we could have more time for sort of discussion and questions. And, Mark certainly shared a lot more about Staples' role in the circular economy last night, and he can say a lot more. So please ask questions, and let's engage in some discussion here. And I'm just going to walk around. Don't be intimidated by the mic. It's just to record it for MCAT so that other people can watch and learn from this event at a later date.
Thanks. Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
So I have a question. I have actually a couple of questions for Mark. I was able to come to your talk last night and was wondering if you are willing to share your slides. There was so much information on them. I don't know if you can give them to Jenny, but I didn't have time to digest them all. It would be great. Yeah, that'd be super. And then I have a more complicated question. I want you to answer something that I need to know. We are going to put on my organization as part of the Towards Zero Waste Month 10 Tips to Zero Waste Your Business event. And we have lots of ideas about what those might be, but I thought you've put a lot of thought into this and come at it from a whole bunch of different angles than we ever thought to. I'm wondering if you could share with me, what you would think of as some of the key tips. And one that I already gleaned from your talk, both last night and this morning, is that idea of looking both at your sourcing and at your customers. So that's a really fun idea, but I don't know if you have other.
And it sounds like there's a related question, so I'm going to ask for that at the same time.
Oh, well, I was just along the same lines wondering what a company can do to encourage the manufacturers they're buying from to take things back. We're talking about the big hospital here that has all kinds of throwaway stuff. You know, how do you get the manufacturer to have a plan to take it back?
Great questions.
In terms of in terms of just tips in general, I mean, we can certainly help you, provide some additional tips and information that you probably don't think of. I mean, one of the things that we try and encourage folks to do is to think, about the full life cycle of the relationship, right? So it's what the product is, what it's made of, how it's shipped to you, how you use it, and then what happens to it at its end of life. And I think if you can be intentional in terms of thinking about that, then a lot of the problems that you run into somewhere along that life cycle that you don't think about that creates additional waste or toxicity or whatever, will be something that, is addressed on the front end when you make that purchasing decision. In terms of, manufacturers taking, material back, again, thinking about the life cycle impact of that, it's really important to take a look at, what is the environmental cost associated with moving that material from point A to point B? And that kind of goes back to something we talked about last night, and that is, and I think James is probably a proponent of this, is how do you basically design out those things that are problematic and that actually make that waste hard to deal with. What we're seeing in other parts of the world, Europe, and Canada, and so forth, is you're seeing this movement toward extended producer responsibility. I'm not sure it's really the right approach overall. I mean, I think what it does is it does force manufacturers to take accountability for the downstream impacts associated with the products that they're manufacturing. But at the end of the day, I think in many cases it still absolves them of sort of environmental sins by letting them off the hook and not letting them think about, is there an alternative to either the design that they have today or the way that it's packaged, or participating in end-of-life solutions. So hopefully that answers your question. Great. Thank you.
I have two follow-up questions to that, or kind of comments to that as well, too. Because we still are an economically driven engine here, there's only two real ways to change anybody's behavior in it, and it's either through economics or through legislation. Right? It's either a regulatory burden or it's an economic burden that has to be solved. And without tackling one of those two in any way, looking at a circular economy or recycling, you have to answer one of those two questions, either through legislature or through making it more affordable or more costly to do business the old way, or to do business the new way. So I think those are the two most important things we run into every single day on that.
Nice points.
I had a question for just at Staples. Do you guys have like regulation around who? I guess, do you have restrictions on the products you carry? Do you require them to have a certain level of sustainability, or is it you're only focusing on kind of like your internal processes and impact?
Yeah, so it's that's a great question. I think for us, we're still moving along that journey. So today we probably have somewhere around 15,000 SKUs, products that we think, maintain a high level of environmental integrity, in our assortment. Many of those products are in our own branded product. As a matter of fact, 31% of the sales of our own branded product come from environmental, what we consider higher environmental standard product in the marketplace. But the idea really isn't to create a niche, a small selection of green products. The idea is to take your entire supply chain and move it along a continuum where everything becomes more sustainable, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal. And the challenge with that is obviously it's a question of scale, and it's also a question of overall commitment, by Staples and certainly by our customers to buy those products. So as I said, I think last night, unfortunately, many of our customers don't care about the environment. They come in based on fit, form, and function and price. What we try to do is to say, you know what, if we can basically take care of that that component from a sustainability perspective on the back end, and it doesn't matter whether it's environmental or not, that's the only thing we're going to offer on the shelf, then we fundamentally shift the market demand. So we put enough critical mass in there to actually start to drive the cost of many of those products down to price parity. Now, in some cases that, and James and I think will can probably attest to this, in some cases that just doesn't happen. It's just right now. But what our goal is to kind of take a stepwise approach and sort of move all of our manufacturers up there. So where we have direct influence with our own branded product and we can set the specification, we're starting to build those standards in. Where we don't, and we're dealing with name brand manufacturers, we're working with those manufacturers to start to make sure they're adhering to those standards. And in some cases, they're already moving in that direction. In other cases, they go a bit kicking and screaming. So it's not always an easy process, but.
Oh, so I just had a kind of a follow-up question. I know, like when I go into Staples, it's hard to tell. It's hard to differentiate as a customer, like who's doing what. And so, have you considered some sort of program that companies could buy into that meet certain criteria that would kind of signal to your clientele that this meets your criteria and this is what the criteria are? Because it's hard when you just go in and you don't know necessarily if one brand is sustainable or not, and so some sort of system to actually signal to the
Yeah, so we've sort of struggled with this wayfind system for customers to easily find sustainable products, and it's it's a bit of a challenge. We had a program before when our tagline was easy, so we had an Eco Easy logo where we were hoping that it would indicate to customers that there was some environmental benefit or attribute that was more beneficial. Obviously, we have a better opportunity online to engage customers around the environmental third-party certifications or the attributes that that the product has, and tell that story. I would say at retail we haven't done as good a job as we need to, and we just hired a chief marketing officer this past year, and he's trying to figure out how do we actually authentically and easily start to build some of that functionality into the way we talk to customers. So I would say stay tuned. I think you'll see that get a little bit better, but right now I would say at retail we probably have a ways to go.
And I hope you don't mind, I just want to ask for a point of clarification. You said 15,000 SKUs are currently like a high level of integrity. And just, it's an enormous ship to shift, right? Like that takes time. That's a lot of items, right? What percentage of how many total SKUs do you have?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we have, we just started to build what we call this virtual marketplace. So for many of you, you may not be aware, but we operate the third largest e-commerce site in the world behind Amazon and Apple. And we're in the process of acquiring our former competitor, Office Depot. So when that happens, we'll probably be solidly in number 2 and, hopefully knocking on Amazon's door. So we went from having about 40,000 SKUs, in our assortment, which were, sort of the core items that you think about Staples, to now having about 1.3 million SKUs that we have available. So anytime you want to look for something, go to staples.com, and it's interesting because we have the ability to sell you products that you probably wouldn't have thought of before. We think it's interesting as we talk about the circular economy, though, and then providing access to small businesses. One of the things that we can do now, which is exciting for me, is we're going to be able to have the ability to provide access to our platform to very small businesses and diverse businesses, sustainable businesses, and so hopefully our assortment continues to expand. But 15,000 SKUs, on a base of 1.3 million is not a very big number. It's not as big a number, but when you look at it in terms of core and in terms of volume, it's a big number. So right now on our business-to-business, the business-to-business work that we do today with, on the contract side of our business, 25% of our sales are represented by sustainable products today, and that's growing faster than our core. So that's exciting for me, and if we can take those SKUs that are really in high demand and actually flip them to become more sustainable, then obviously that number goes up quicker. So instead of chasing the tail of that spend, we're really focused on where the big opportunities are. So sorry for rambling.
Well, no, that was a very rich response with a lot of interesting aspects.
Probably too rich.
I'm going to go over here.
So Jenny, thanks a lot for putting this together, and thanks to the speakers for being. I got just a couple quick ones for Patrick, then a couple quick ones for James too. So Patrick, what did you pay for that container?
So just the container itself is $3,500.
$3,500. Okay.
Yeah, so.
Would you be interested in buying one from me here in town?
Well, we could take a look at it. That's a good. They're all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah, you can
Is it a high cube?
No, it's the former hydrogen fueling station. it just needs a home. And anyway, we can talk later. You don't have to answer that right now. So, and I got just a couple questions. And I asked a kind of a challenging question to Mark last night, like could he buy plastic at 3 cents a pound in Missoula? So, future discussions. But for James, I'm wondering, are you all dealing with citrus waste at all right now at Blue Marble, James? So I've been landfill free. I don't know if this is like a support group for for folks like that. But I've been landfill free for about 4 years in Missoula, and it's a challenge finding places to put things. So my wife doesn't really want the citrus peels in the backyard in the compost because of the pesticides and things like that. But would citrus be something that Blue Marble might be interested in upcycling, processing? I know you get a lot of funny things over there. Would that be something?
Yeah, that's a complex question, but we've worked with over 4,800 feedstocks now over the last 7 years. We do tons of work on citrus. We have the same problem as you do, though, right? We don't want pesticide in our product. So if we're looking at the tail end of the product, there are companies who have modeled business units where they actually take those citrus peels that they know are from Brazil and are loaded with pesticide. They process them in the U.S. Even though it's illegal to sell in the U.S., they sell to Africa. As the same thing because there's no specs. So if you don't want to follow that thing, and we don't work that way, we make sure it's all free of that stuff. We have to source very specific stuff. So we always joke we have to go to the good food store and get organic lemons if we want to make even the sample thing to demonstrate technology, because we have to find the stuff that has it. And like organic lemons at a normal grocery store, still loaded with pesticides, still detectable in all our analytical equipment, all that kind of stuff. Now, the tail end is to actually identify products for those peels that could go into something else. Could we process that out and make that a fuel component or something like that where no one cares if it gets burned? And so those are the ways to look at it. So it's not that we're not necessarily the solution, but we're not likely to make a component or an additive for fuel or oil or whatever no one cares, but we'd be more than willing to help someone develop that technology or work towards that process, or work with a partner, say a biofuel manufacturer in Washington State or Wyoming or Colorado or wherever where that material could go to it.
Thanks. And then one last question. So what's in Blue Marble's garbage can? What's in Blue Marble's dumpster?
So effectively, at the end of the day, it's stuff that no one can really deal with in Montana anyways. So it's plastics, right? Because a lot of them aren't recyclable here. Or if someone says they recycle them, they might still be burning them. It's glass, because we have no real way to do glass. And then honestly, it's a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily go to the landfill, but no one will take for most reasons. So, pallets, right? No one really has a good way to get rid of pallets. So those are there, and they kind of stockpile or whatever from there. So there's a lot of aspects from there. Our manufacturing zero waste, but unfortunately, even we haven't found a way to make like office supplies zero waste, tell you the truth. A Bic pen still has to go somewhere if someone's using a Bic pen, right? So at the end of the day, it's really hard to make that. Hospitals, biotech stuff, laboratory work, notoriously hard to make zero waste because you have to use tons of disposables, even by regulation, right? Lots of stuff that's going to come into contact with biohazard, it's going to go into an autoclave, it's going to go to a thing, and it's going to have to be disposed to either an incinerator or a landfill by law. And that's where regulation really starts playing a role, right? There's lots of things that are completely illegal to do in a circular economy, right? If you actually look at the regulations. You may want to recycle something, and you can go to jail for trying to recycle it. So.
Thank you.
A great answer. And I will just say that Staples sells recycled pens that are refillable. So, yes, great.
Hi, my name is Sandra, and I'm with the State Department of Environmental Quality, and you mentioned pallets. And some guy contacted me months ago from Missoula looking for pallets. So if we can talk in the future, I'll try and help you with that.
Yes. We love making these connections.
And the Johnson brothers used to recycle a ton out at their thing out by the Y. I don't know if they still do or not. I just know the guy that used to come by and pick up our pallets and I guess sell it to them, he doesn't come by anymore and pick up metal or whatever. So he kind of disappeared, I think, as Allied Waste started paying more attention to the recycling scene. In Missoula, I think it kind of closed down some opportunities because it's easier to sell your metal. And so the guys who were kind of, we always called them the Scrapper Johns because they kind of just came out of nowhere and picked up stuff and did whatever they did with it. And they were kind of serve the same role as any other kind of in an ecosystem, that kind of removal of waste for economic benefit. Those guys kind of dried up in the last 2 years. I think right about the same time, Allied Waste started paying attention to recycling, and they bought a recycling company recently. So a lot of those guys who used to provide those services just aren't around anymore.
So do you guys have mongrel pallets, or do you guys have standardized?
Standard wood 4x4.
Okay, and you're having problems getting rid of them?
Yeah.
Huh, interesting, because we had problems, many years ago where we had mongrel pallets coming in for furniture and for paper and whatnot, and we had our own shredders at our distribution centers, and then we tried to address it by having a standardized spec that everybody had to ship in on. If they weren't shipping it, we'd find them. So they all started to conform, and so what you basically did is you had pallets in and pallets out. So it was a way to kind of keep them in the, at least in the ecosystem, and moving, regardless of whether we used them or our supplier did. It didn't really matter. We had so many pallets coming in with inbound freight, and then so many were going back out on the truck. So.
Yeah. In other locales or municipalities like Seattle, there's lots of biomass boilers. There's lots of heat recovery systems. It was a great way to dispose of a lot of that stuff. We have novel air regulation in our valley here, and regulatory requirements for any kind of combustion systems and particulate and all that, because we are in a valley and we get inversions. So there's not an abundance of heat recovery systems and biomass boilers in the Missoula area. So kind of limits where stuff like cardboard and wood waste and all that can go.
Along the lines of what you were just saying about standardizing shipping pallets, a few years ago, Walmart made an incredible PR film about all the things they were doing. And one of them was that they were going to require their the products that they were selling had to come in the smallest possible container. Now, obviously, this was to Walmart's advantage because they could put more widgets on the bus. But this was clearly a PR film. Does it help to educate the public that you're doing these good things?
For me?
Yeah, I mean, does Staples Staples is doing a lot of good things.
Yeah, I mean, I think the the challenge that you have is again, how do end users, how do they react to what we're to something like that. And in Walmart's case, I think that while they're doing a lot of really great things, and I think they are, and I really believe that when you look behind the the curtain, it's not window dressing. I mean, their merchants are actually incentivized to reduce packaging, and if they don't hit it, there's a compensation thing that kicks in. So clearly people are taking it seriously. But the problem is they're Walmart, right? And so they've not established, I think, that credible relationship over time, and so there are still people out there that are very skeptical. So for us, again, the thing that we're trying to do is figure out how do you tell those stories more authentically, and then how do you engage. What's interesting, and I think last night I talked a little bit about uncommon collaboratives. How do we engage, the full range of our supply chain, right, from raw material inputs to manufacturers to to customers, and then people that take the stuff back and tell that story, right? Because that's the circular economy. And I think what happens there is it's not a Staples story, it's a collaborative story between all of our partners. And I think that those are the kinds of things that in most circles I think resonate better with people. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. We're not there yet. So if you've got suggestions, I'd be happy to hear them. But yeah.
Thank you, Jenny. Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm representing the hospital here, and also our large system, which is 35 hospitals in 5 states, but also as a consumer. So I have just comments for each of you. I think fantastic work. Really appreciate hearing about it. From your perspective, affordable and small footprint housing is a public health issue. So I think that could be an interesting way to take your company. It seems more obvious in a place like Seattle where it might be more in demand, but that could be an issue here too. It is an issue. Homelessness is an issue. I'm not suggesting that your buildings are for that purpose alone, but there are some advantages. From your perspective, boy, do we have some great waste I'd love for you to solve, particularly pharmaceutical and hazardous. We have also infectious, nuclear, all sorts of stuff that's highly regulated as are hazardous and pharmaceutical. But I just wonder in some years, 3, 4, 5, if that could not be a stream that could somehow be used. The regulatory stuff is just horrific, I know, and it's also incredibly expensive. We spend a huge amount of money on shipping and treating those kinds of wastes. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that at this moment.
I will say that a lot of what are classically considered, third world countries or whatever are actually much more ahead of the United States on things like recycling pharmaceuticals and using recovery technologies. I worked for a Chinese pharmaceutical firm for 2 years. We literally installed pharmaceutical recycling systems into hospital systems, including scrubbing some pharmaceuticals out of the urine because it was more cost effective. So,
yeah, let's get there. And then, Mark, I just through our system, I know that our supply chain is about $1 billion a year. We use Staples. We have little green indicators on some of our products and whatnot. And it's really complex, and we go through buying organizations, VHA and Novation, which you know a whole lot more about than I do. I rub up against our supply chain from the sustainability side because I push a little bit. And I'm just thinking of your comments about really bringing in local businesses and minority-owned businesses and businesses from around the world to scale up to be available to large buyers like ourselves or even individual buyers in our community. And so I'm just interested in your thoughts, because you're saying that you're approaching Amazon size in terms of online business. How would we as consumers know that those folks are being protected, not squelched by the large organization, so that their individuality and products are not lost?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think like anything, I think we're focused on the largest suppliers and the largest impact areas first, and we use, particularly for our own branded product, we use a third-party service that makes sure that all of our social and environmental criteria are being met. So we use Bureau Veritas that goes in and actually does factory audits and so forth. And for many of our own branded products, I think what you bring up is a really interesting challenge and opportunity for us, and that is how do we create more transparency for those small businesses and making sure that before we even bring them on board, that we're using it as a teaching moment to say, you know what, these are the baseline criteria that we need from you from an environmental and social perspective. We need to make sure that you're meeting those, as well as all the other things relative to packaging and and product design. We're not there yet, I would say, just because of the scale of that. But I think that my hope is that we get there. So I think it's a really great point. And then getting back to healthcare just in general, Roger McFadden, who works on my team, is a green chemist that's been very active in the healthcare industry for a number of years, and so he's we have been working with Practice Green Health and Healthier Hospital Initiative and so forth, trying to look at some of the challenges that James was talking about, and I would agree that we're not as far along as many other countries, But I think we also need to challenge regulation sometimes when regulation has just been in place for a long time and times have changed and materials have changed, and we think we need to say, well, what's the real risk here, and sort of challenge that. We were talking last night about just transportation, some of the DOT requirements that really make getting materials back into a circular economy challenging today. Some of them are rooted in legitimate safety concerns, and some of them have just been in place for a long time and nobody's challenged the regulation. So I think those are the kinds of things that as we all collectively move along that journey, we can start to try and hopefully address. But your comment is an excellent one, and I'm going to take it back, so thank you.
Great.
My interest lies in the built environment, and the question is, I guess, directed towards Staples Corporation and what they do to minimize their footprint when they're building new box stores or moving into new box stores. And I have a anecdote. When Staples recently moved down the street on Reserve, they gutted a building. I was part of that process. And my business focuses on minimizing waste in building disassembly, and we recycled everything that we can. Obviously, drywall, it goes to the landfill. But because I was a subcontractor working for a contractor who was probably subcontracted from somebody in Staples, there was no clear direction on what should be recycled. I took it upon myself because that's what I believe in, and I save money in dump costs. But other subcontractors there were throwing out obviously recyclable metals, which I'm a dumpster diver. I pulled out and I recycled it anyhow. But what's Staples doing to minimize their footprint in their built environment?
So a couple of things. I mean, I think when we build our buildings, many times we don't build it, the landlord does. So we actually have a set of prototypical plans and specifications. So we sit down with our construction and engineering folks, our real estate folks, our operations folks, our facilities folks, our energy folks, and we look at the prototypes every year. So we look at, what's the building shell composed of, what's the insulated wall value, what are we putting on the roof for rooftop units, lighting, switchgear, et cetera, finishes, all of those things. And obviously we look to make sure every year that we're improving the environmental performance of that. I would say we probably, in jobs that we do control, we do a lot more of that recycling. So We do pull out the metal. We do have separate dumpsters typically on site when we're doing renovations for the, for the existing buildings. I would say that for a subcontractor that works for the landlord, we probably haven't been as intentional in our prototypical plans and specifications as to how that material needs to be handled. But you know what? It's a great point, and I think we can actually incorporate that kind of guidance moving forward. So I think it's a really excellent point, and it's something that we can do pretty easily next time we have our prototypical plan specs and review. So, and by the way, we don't have to wait for that. We can put an addendum to to those plans and specifications to try and address that. So I think it's an excellent point. So thank you for bringing it up.
Nice. More questions? Oh, good.
I have questions for James and Patrick, and it's sort of about your, not end goals, but maybe shorter term goals. Well, and for James, I'm wondering if there's sort of a holy grail of materials that you would love to envision repurposing. And for Patrick, I'm wondering if there's a particular source locally that you're finding your containers, or if there's an end goal in terms of how many containers you hope to process in a year.
Well, kind of my end goal is fairly simple on our side, not so much in the final product, but really what we're working towards with a bunch of CPG and Fortune 500 companies is moving effectively all of their manufacturing systems, especially in the food industry, towards effectively zero waste, where there is no discharge of any recoverable organic material that can either be converted into something else or be turned into something that can be recycled back into their system. So effectively, we're targeting for those, at least when it comes to food processing waste, that's actually off the process line. Effectively, the only discharge is being product, clean air, clean water. And so we're actively moving towards that with planning out massive, multi-$100 million projects with multiple, Fortune 500 companies at this point in time to move their factories towards that. So that's kind of my end goal, isn't the final product. It's what's being done with the waste in those kind of environments.
And, as far as our goals, in the short run, we're focused on these tiny houses, and we just want to get 5 of these homes on the ground delivered to clients this year, and that we have that in our pipeline. So starting with just this first project that we're going to be delivering, this client in particular, it's kind of a cool story. They lost their cabin in the Cascade Complex fire in northern Washington this last year, and so they got some insurance money and they're buying it, but to replace their previous cabin. But in the long run, there's a lot of applications for this affordable housing, like you guys mentioned. There's actually been a 1,000 unit apartment complex in Amsterdam, a student housing complex that was built all out of recycled shipping containers. And so that's something that, a lot of this has been done around the world for quite a long time. And we would like to be one of the first companies in the United States to really start producing container homes on a large scale for people. And so in 10 years from now, I'd hope that we would be delivering hundreds of these homes to people a year. So that's kind of our bigger picture.
And you did your market research and decided to start with the tiny version and market
it's
to
just a really,
crowded cities.
It's just a kind of the path of least resistance.
Right.
People really want them, and they are really excited about these houses. People possibly downsizing or getting a cabin, and so in the early stages, that's the market to enter. In the long run, we could be building a 50-unit apartment complex.
And they've got, excuse me for adding this, that they've got designs already for units that take 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 shipping containers, and so it's just a matter of time to get that out there. So more to come. Other questions? This has been a really great discussion. Thanks for all those questions. It adds a lot of richness, doesn't it? And it's a nice diversity on the panel to have these different perspectives on a circular economy. So Unless there's any last questions, I want to really, just really warmly thank you, Patrick, for, and wish you all the best as Montana builds. And thank you, James, for your huge vision and for, figuring out how to stay based in Missoula and have that big reach and really be effective. And especially Mark, thank you so much. You have been a fabulous guest, and really fascinating to hear how much you've shared. You've been so humble and friendly and warm and generous for about 6 different events over the last 24 hours, and I just can't thank you enough. So thank you for joining us in Montana. Please come back. So yeah, and thanks to Staples also. Oh, and right. So what we have for you are, thank you for some posters of Missoula. These are posters.
So yours is in a tube. So that's actually Patrick's.
Oh, thank you.
You want your, I don't know, walls to remind you of Missoula. So.
Yeah, and this poster actually has all kinds of hidden little things in it that you can search for, and so they have lists of things that they can look for, the couple that are, dating, and the mother with their baby, and the, somebody reading a book, and, all the different things in the poster. So